Africa is in trouble, and I'm going to need every single African to listen to this. Netanyahu said that once he's done liberating Palestine, he's going to come to Africa to liberate black people. Listen to this.
After I liberate the Jewish people, I will go to Africa to help liberate the black people.
There has always been a plan to resettle the fake Jews, the Zionists actually, in Africa. And that's something that we already know by now, that there was a plan to resettle them in East Africa, but also South Africa is involved, and I'm going to explain it to you. Let me start with South Africa. Let me start with East Africa, sorry. So before they went to Israel, the fake Israel, that is Palestine, they considered settling in Kenya. And then there was also another Uganda scheme, as you can see right here. So the main plan is Indians are the ones who are going to betray us. Just like Israel was chosen to be in Palestine, Indians were chosen to be in Africa. Let's look at the history of Indians being in Africa. They came here as slaves for the British colonies to build railways. But somehow, very weirdly, very suspiciously, the same Indians were the first people to be given rights in Africa above the colonized rights. Let's start with Kenya, for example. Kenya has this book called History of Parliament of Kenya. The first Indian is elected to Legco. Legco was like the parliament back then in 1927. 1927. Then we have this yellow highlighted place that says the first black person was in 1944. 1927, the first Indians. And then we have 1944, the first blacks. And that was after a lot of pressure being put by the black community to have representation. Before then, they gave, you see this white guy, he was the one who was elected to represent black people. But for this one, the Eliud, this guy is Eliud Matthew, the first black. There were 5 people before they allowed black people to be in parliament, in the so-called parliament back then. They already had 5 Indians sat at the elected members. 5 Indians. Why are slaves being given the opportunity to have their rights considered in the parliament before the colonized? That's when I started digging about Israel and India's relationship. Until right now, as we speak, India proudly is supporting Israel. And I'm going to make you understand why Indians are the ones who are going to betray us in this revolution that they're trying to start with Netanyahu. In helping you understand, I want to show you a video of Idi Amin Dada, the horrible dictator from Uganda, who was very much hated by the West, and we know something about people who are completely hated by the West. I want you to just listen to this video.
I changed from Israeli alliance because Israeli are criminals and that they are not trusted people. They don't tell the world the truth. They were taken to Palestine as refugees, and then they changed Palestine to become a state of Israel by force of arms given to them by Americans and the British.
I need you to understand that Idi Amin Dada was a dictator who was first of all trained by the West to come and take over power in Uganda, because Uganda was also part of the regime that they wanted to conquer. I'll tell you who these people are. And then he went rogue. And then this guy did something extremely unimaginable. Idi Amin announced that God had visited him in a dream and issued a divine instruction. Asians came to Uganda to build a railway. The railway is finished. They must leave now. Let me show you a picture of these Asians. Are you noticing something about the Asians? Look at them. What do you see? Who do they look like? Are they not Indians? The Asians that were told to leave Uganda, they were given 90 days to leave Uganda. Why did he do that? Why did he specifically want Asians out? At this point, white people are already out. The British was completely out of Uganda. The next people to follow were the Indians. Why? Then the article proceeds to say that 50,000 Indian Asians were expelled. About 50,000 Asians were forced to leave the country in 1972 on the orders of Idi Amin, who accused them of milking Uganda's money. At the time, the Asians owned 90% of the country's businesses. So you're telling me the people who came as slaves to Africa now all of a sudden own 90% of the country's business? Suspicious. First of all, these slaves, the Indian slaves, are brought to Africa as slaves to work for the regime, which was the British regime. Then when they leave, they don't live with the British people. They stay back and they currently own the majority of African corporations and companies. And they were the first people to be allowed to be in the parliament with the white people to secure their rights. Slaves don't have rights. That's suspicious. And then Idi Amin kicks them out because he knew the plan that was of Israel. He literally said he refused to join Israeli, which means he knew he was literally trained by the West. So the first thing he does is kick them out. Suspicious. South Africa has what exactly? A lot of Indian people. You don't believe me? Let me show you. The question is, which African country has the most Indians? We have South Africa. This is the list. The list is down here. South Africa with 1.6. Then we have Mauritius, Reunion, and Kenya. Very suspicious. How many Indian companies are in South Africa? 150. Kenya is a home away from Indians, as around 70% businessmen and taxpayers in Kenya are persons of Indian origin. Nation Media Group is the largest independent media house in East and Central Africa, with operations in print, broadcast, and digital media, which attract and serve unparalleled audiences across East Africa. And who owns Nation Media Services? Nation Media Group? Aga Khan. This article talks about Israel, the Jews, fake Jews, moving to Cape Town, South Africa. It says the plan is to keep South African Jewry strong. And after discussing it with our colleagues in Gauteng, I don't know how to pronounce that, we agreed it will be best to encourage Jews in the area who are considering emigration to come to Cape Town rather than leave the country. So South Africa already has Israeli migrating over there. In Kenya, we have something called Adani Group. Now, if you don't know what Adani Group is, it is an Indian company which is taking over the Kenyan airports. Why do they need Kenyan airport, you may ask? Because they're going to be bringing the Israeli here to settle as refugees. Do you remember when Idi Amin said that Israel went to Palestine as refugees, and then after 1948, they became independent, and then that's when the attacks started? Currently, Israelites are running away and going to different countries, Thailand, South Africa, and very soon Kenya, because of the Adani Group. Adani is Indian. Thank you very much. So we have a very strong Israeli-Indian bond. Then we have them migrating to African countries as refugees. And now Cape Town, South Africa, wants to be separate from the rest of Africa. Sounds familiar? Is it not the same thing they did in Palestine when they became refugees and then they separated and then they gained independence? That's exactly what's happening in Cape Town. That's exactly what's going to happen to Kenya. Now, why only these two countries? If you take South Africa and you take Kenya down, those are the only two countries currently that have the willpower to fight. Because, I mean, look around. Congo, Malawi, Burundi. Look at the countries surrounding Kenya. We have Uganda, which has a dictator. Right now, they have never fought their dictator. You think they're going to fight Israel? Why do Kenyans have bases? UK base, all these bases in Africa, for US base, Israeli base. Why do they have their bases, and why are they training in Africa? Ask yourself those questions. So they're moving to Thailand, which is next to Asia. Then they're going to South Africa and Kenya, which is Africa. They're going to capture Africa, just the way they used Palestine to capture Middle East. And that is what we call world domination. Now listen to this.
If we are the chosen people, who are you to tell us what to do? Who are you? Who is the international community to tell Israel what to do? International law, wonderful thing. It doesn't apply on us. It applies on any other place on earth, not on Israel. Because we are the chosen people. Don't you understand it?
NATO chose Israel. And NATO are the former colonizers of Africa. So a bunch of former colonizers formed a group called NATO to recolonize the entire world. But this time, Israel is the chosen people. NATO is the God Israel refers to. That's the big secret. Recolonization of the entire world. Africa, Middle East, and Asia. That's the big secret. Israel, India.